welcome to Stash Chats. If you are new around here, my name is Yvette and I'm the co-founder of the Stash Hub Sewing Organizer app. So Stash Chats is my weekly show where every week I talk to a different member of the sewing community about their stash and their personal sewing journey and what they're up to in the sewing community. So it's really exciting that every single week we get to hear a different story and some different approaches and attitudes towards sewing. So it's really, really good fun. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, there's a whole playlist of them so we can keep you company when you're doing your sewing. So do get involved in the chat if you're watching us live. So if you can pop into the chat where you're joining from, we can welcome you to the chat, see who's watching, and then later on you can ask our guest Lou some questions, and it will be really good fun to get the conversation going and all get to know each other a bit better. So it will be really good fun. So a little bit of background on our guest today. I am speaking to Lou, who is the creator behind the So Much to Design account on Instagram. So I'm sure a lot of you guys will be following her already and hopefully already joining in with the My Makes for the Month challenge as well, which is a really great challenge for joining in with the community, because all you have to do is share what you've made that month. You don't have to stick to a theme or make any different plans from what you normally do. You can just share your projects and then be up for a chance of winning a prize. So that's really good fun, and there's some great prizes, especially this month because Stash Hub is sponsoring one of the prizes. So go and check that out on Lou's account, which is So Much to Design. So there is, as always, links in the description below this video, so you can go and check out her account afterwards. I can see that Mel's just joined us in the chat. So hello, Mel. Thank you for joining us in the chat. And yeah, Lou is also a editor for the So Over 50 account on Instagram, which is definitely well worth a follow. So go and follow them. They're also linked in the description below. Whatever your age is, you don't have to be over 50 to follow them, but they are so good with all kinds of different tips and sewing community things, lives, all sorts. So we're going to hear more about So Over 50 from Lou later on, I'm sure. Just realized I haven't turned my light on, so let's do that now so you can actually see me. Oh, hello, who we got joining us now? Louvla, sorry if I've completely butchered your name, but thank you so much for joining us from London. So yeah, everyone else who's just popped on, welcome to Stash Chats. Do get involved in the live chat, and if you're watching on catch up, pop into the comments as well, and let us know where you're joining from, and hopefully you have a good time in this episode. Right, let's get Lou on, shall we? Get cracking with this chat, and then anytime during the chat as well, you can pop your questions for Lou in and we will add them to the conversation. Right, let's get Lou on and get going. Hello, Lou.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. It's really exciting.
It is very exciting to be able to connect.
Yeah, so you're joining us from Canada today, right?
Yeah, Victoria, Canada. So on the west coast of British Columbia. It's yes, like the Maui of the West Coast. It's an absolutely beautiful place to live. I'm very lucky.
Amazing. Oh, we've got Alison who's just joined us from Kent. Oh, she's Alison says, as someone well over 50, I'm particularly interested in the So Over 50 community. So we'll get onto that a bit later, I'm sure.
Yes.
So do you want to just kick us off, Lou, with a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into sewing?
Yes. So I'm now retired. I was an educator and a school principal and district educational leader for 34 years. And around 2020, I had grown up in a house where my mom was an amazing sewer, and she'd made me clothes as a child. And then things had, I didn't sew, apart from being a teenager and sewing a tube skirt to wear out for the evening. I just really didn't sew. And after my career had slowed down, and my child had been gone off to university, and she was old enough. All of a sudden we find time, and so I reconnected with sewing. But this was a time when I didn't even know how to download a PDF, didn't know anything about Instagram, and just was thinking, well, sewing is going to be about a tissue paper pattern. Excuse me. So all of a sudden, I realized there was this whole world out there that I wanted to start making connections. Sorry, hang on. Shortly after I started sewing and just relearning the basics, my mom went into palliative care, and so I really felt that this was a connection, and that was the first connection that I experienced in the sewing room, and I realized how important it was. After I started making a few things, my daughter, Sydney, encouraged me. She said, "Mom, you should put a picture on Instagram." Well, what's Instagram? How do I share a picture? So the big learning curve of, daughter teaching mother. And then I discovered that there was an entire world that I knew nothing about. And it was all about relationships and connection. So Over 50 was one of the first accounts that I came across. And Sandy was one of the first people I think that I actually spoke with on Instagram. And I realized not only were there mentors and experienced, talented makers who could teach me, but there was this group of amazing people who you could connect with. And so that's how it all began.
I'm so sorry. Like, you've connected across the generations, but in both directions, like with your mum's legacy of sewing and also your daughter helping you get involved in the sewing community on Instagram.
Yeah. And I think, we're all lifelong learners, and there's so much that we can learn from one another, and so many ways that we can support one another. Sewing is kind of a solo sport most of the time, and that meditative, creative process is really, really important to all of us. But being able to connect with and build relationships with people, I now have friends around the world that I would never have been able to meet if it wasn't for something as powerful as sewing and Instagram.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think as well, like when you're learning a new skill, if it's something like sewing where you're at home on your own, it can be quite isolating if you think, oh, I'm really struggling with this and I don't know what I'm doing. But if you've got that community to reach out to and say, oh, has anyone made this pattern? Do you know how it works? And or just to see other people also on their learning journeys with you, you feel a lot less lonely and more connected.
Yeah. And I think for me, the immediate connection that I felt through Instagram was the impetus to creating the sewing challenge. It was really, I had participated in a couple of sewing challenges myself and realized how, easy it would be to organize one. And I wanted it to be something that was really, really inclusive, didn't have too much criteria or parameters, because I think that when we sew, we should just be able to share what we love or our journeys. And so I came up with a My Makes for the month. This was after learning what a hashtag was. I didn't even know that. And started just connecting. I had really found a lot of creativity and amazing patterns that fit through independent pattern companies. And so I started by just literally sending people a direct message and saying, I'd like to start a sewing challenge. Would you be interested in being a sponsor? And I couldn't believe the uptake and how many people just immediately said, absolutely, we could sponsor this prize or this prize. And now it's in its 5th year. And this year we've morphed it a little bit because it started off as a collage of makes. But then, I started reading some people's comments saying, oh, I couldn't enter this month because I didn't have time to make a collage, or I wasn't able to take photos of everything that I made. And so this year we opened it up so that you can just share what you make. just build that connection. And it's been, the uptake this year has been really good. Now we have an average of 5 or 6 sponsors per month. Of course, I get a tickle in my throat, right?
Don't worry. If you want to take another drink, I'll spend a second just saying hello to Heather, who's just joined us from Castlegar, BC, in Western
Hello,
Canada.
Heather. Heather is one of my Instagram connections. I met her through
Amazing.
Instagram, and now we actually do sewing meetups, and we've become really good friends. Hello, Heather.
Well, that's so nice.
Yeah, but now I have about 5 to 6 sponsors per month. There's no pressure as to what people sponsor. People just sponsor what they're comfortable with. And my only request is that anyone who enters the challenge follows the companies so that it helps them to broaden their impact in the community, and again, builds those connections and relationships. And we're going into our 5th year of the challenge. So it's been really fun to organize, and the outreach has been really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just say, like, amazing job for hosting it, because you host it like every single month. It's a new hashtag. So you've got to find new sponsors every month. You've got to pick winners every month. And like, so I've hosted a couple of sewing challenges myself, and it's like a lot to keep on top of. So you've done so well to keep it going for 5 years.
Yes. It's my way of giving back. And that's important to me. Like, how can we give back and support one another in sewing and in growth? So that's just my contribution.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, because so you said that you kind of got really into sewing and the online sewing community as well during like 2020 and all the lockdowns. And I think, like, for me personally, that was a big motivator as well. So I started sewing early 2020, like just before all the lockdowns. And so having that community online was, gave me people to connect to when you're sort of stuck at home and you can't see anyone. And also the challenges really helped like shape a very kind of formless time when, every day was the same, every month was the same, you're just stuck at home, it was all very bleak. And so having those challenges was, it's like, well, here's some inspiration, here's something to aim for. So I got really into it as well, like into the sewing community through discovering challenges.
Yeah. And I mean, really, I think for the sewing community, COVID did us a favor. I guess if we always look for the silver lining is that Instagram and sewing just became significantly larger because people had the time to connect. And then once those relationships were established, there was no turning back.
Definitely. And also I think, I mean, I don't know what it was like in Canada, but there was this whole thing in England where they said, oh, everyone needs to wear a face covering. But you couldn't buy them. So the only way you could get them was if somebody made them. So I think that really like elevated the status of like being able to sew. It wasn't like, well, this is some like niche thing that like no one really cares about. It was just like, if you can sew, please, I need your help.
I know. I was at an elementary school as a principal at the time, and I would just, on the weekend, I would just make masks. And then, of course, for the teachers, we would make seasonal masks, and they'd just be in a bowl at a staff meeting. And I think it helped so many people who still don't sew or who may never sew realize that sewing is an art. That you take something that is completely one-dimensional or two-dimensional, a piece of fabric, and you create three-dimensional beauty out of it. It's really it's an amazing thing, and you can do that in a matter of hours, which is also so rewarding.
Definitely. We've got a great comment from Heather about the My Makes for the Month challenge. Heather says, it's my favorite way to keep track of my own makes and to catch up on what other makers are up to. It's a huge contribution to the sewing community.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's one of the comments that I often get back from folks, especially those folks that post the collage at the end of the month. And they say, they can go back over their feed and they have a monthly review of everything that they've made. And often people will say, oh, I didn't realize I made this much this month. So yeah, it's rewarding for everyone, which is also another positive.
Amazing. Shall
Yeah.
we move on to chat a bit about your sewing stash?
Oh, okay. I want to say that my sewing stash is in a large chest of drawers and a big cupboard, and it keeps it all tucked away. But then again, it keeps it all tucked away, and I really have enjoyed since January using Stash Hub to help me keep track of my stash. And this isn't a paid advertisement in any way. It's just genuinely a way for me to recognize and see what is in my stash. And I would say it's probably a small to medium sized stash. I'm careful about what I buy. If I fall in love with it immediately, or I go out because I want a specific fabric. So and I buy within my color range, which also helps. It's another way of chipping down on buying too much. But what I've realized with Stash Hub, the first thing that you think is, oh, how am I ever going to take a picture and record all of these things in my stash? So I've just set goals for myself. If I have a project and I'm taking out fabric like a woven cotton poplins or whatever, or jersey knits, then I'll take them all out like I would to decide what I'm going to make. But now I take photographs of them. And then once I've taken photographs of them, now I can create those connections within the app. And so it hasn't felt overwhelming, but I've discovered things that I'd forgotten about. So I want to share a couple of special things.
Yeah, go for it.
This is a large piece of, it's on the video, it looks more blue, but it's more like a slate gray mohair. And it's probably from the late 60s, early 70s. This was given to me by a dear friend who was cleaning out after her mom's estate. And this fabric came from her grandmother's store that she had opened in Montreal in the 60s, and her name was Hilda. So I also got a couple of the tags. And her grandmother traveled all over the world to buy fabrics so that she could make original outfits. So I think I'm going to make like a full length collared vest, because then I'll be able to wear it more because it's very warm. My other, this is not old. This is only a couple of years old. This symbolizes the first fabric purchase that I made overseas at Liberty of London. This is going to become an oversized collared button-down shirt this spring. And it was just so exciting to be able to shop for fabric in Europe when we were on one of our first trips after my husband and I retired.
And was that really like overwhelming in Liberty, like just looking at all the prints and all the fabrics? Or were you like, you saw that fabric and you were like, this is the one for me?
Yes. Well, shopping for colors really does help. But I mean, I spent so much time just touching the fabric. Like, just to have fabric there in front of you is such a treat, right? It's like sampling chocolates in a chocolatier. It's just better. I appreciate that we can shop online, but being able to just walk around and the history of that store, and understanding where the timbers came from and how old it was, the whole experience is just amazing. This is, I'm a bit of a charity shop hunter, and I love vintage jewelry. And now, of course, whenever I go into charity shops, I look for fabric. So this is kind of an abstract satin print. It kind of has an Asian vibe to it for me. And then the back side is lilac. I still haven't come across the perfect pattern. It's quite a narrow fabric, so probably will end up as a blouse. But the reason why I was drawn to it is because it was on this roll, which I still have on display in my sewing room. And I did some research. Dewberry is no longer in existence, but this was, it's a handwritten tag from 1412 Broadway, New York. Creators of fabrics that fashion decrees. So originally there was 24 yards. That's not what I have left, but this is a pretty cool vintage piece of fabric that has provenance. So that's another piece of my stash that's special to me.
That's really cool that it's got a story from
Yeah.
before it even came to you. Like someone's gone to New York, bought
Yeah.
a whole roll of fabric. They must have made something with the rest of it. So,
Yeah.
it's like twins are out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, if
Yeah.
anyone's watching and has like, they saw that fabric and immediately thought, yes, I know the pattern for this, let us
Yes.
know in the comments.
Yeah. Or let us know if you found something really, really neat in a charity shop that has that kind of provenance to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's quite rare that you would get, the label and know where it was originally
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. It was really fun to go on Google Maps and look up the address to see, well, what's there now. And there isn't a fabric store there now, but it is in the garment district. So that's pretty neat.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, so Mel says, do you come to London? What's your favorite place and where would you like to shop in England?
So I was actually born in Sheffield, and my family immigrated to Canada in 1969. So going back to the UK is very special for me. My husband and I love to make London a stopover. So once we get into London as the main hub, and then we can travel from there. Covent Garden, I mean, it's an amazing place, the age and the history. We've gone to Borough Market for the same thing. I was telling Yvette that the last time we actually went to Greenwich. My husband's a retired history geography teacher, so we wanted to stand on either side of the Prime Meridian. But just the history behind in Greenwich, and the UK and London has a beauty to its age. Hopefully, it's what we all will have as well. And the Victoria and Albert Museum, I could go there every day. It's amazing. The National Galleries. So being able to see and witness that kind of art for both of us is really quite amazing. And then the culture, just going into pubs, having a Sunday roast, all of those things. I just appreciate the culture and the people as well as the history. So if you have any good places for me to visit, put them in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of places in London, like Goldhawk Road and Walthamstow Market, where there's like just like whole streets of fabric shops,
Right.
which is really exciting. But obviously, you'll have to watch your luggage allowance.
Well, I often just might take a carry-on and an empty piece of luggage to take back.
That's
Yeah.
a very good plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I always go in the charity shops in the UK. I think they're some of the best charity shops that I've been in my travels. They're just so beautifully curated and maintained, and there's some real treasures that you can find, which is always fun.
Amazing. It depends like where you go as well. Like if you go to charity shops in sort of wealthier areas of London, there's like, like really, really good stuff in there, which is quite exciting.
Yeah. I wanted to share one more thing with you. So these are Wilkinson sewing scissors, and I got them for Christmas from my husband. So it's William Whitley. These are actually made in Sheffield, which is where I was born. And he had my maiden name and my birthday engraved on the scissors. If we ever go to Sheffield and when we return, I would instantly go here for a tour. But these are the kinds of things to me that, I still have my mom's sewing scissors. And those are the things that are important as far as the history of what we're creating. Anytime we make something, it's not fast fashion. it's fashionable and stylish, and it's lasting. And I think that, you know, recording that for my makes of the month, or recording it in a way that is important to you, is it's important for the provenance and the history of, I mean, you go to a place like V&A and they're displaying what people made 100 years ago. And that can still be our contribution if we try and find ways that work for us to do that.
Yeah, it's like in history, people will, they'll look at old letters
Yeah.
and get information from that. But I feel like in the future it'll be like they'll look back at old Instagram posts. This is your way of like making your public record.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I know that for me, I really enjoyed reading The Sewing Machine by Natalie Fergie, and I actually reached out and connected with Natalie on Instagram, and we had some great conversations. But it inspired me to keep track of my makes. So whenever I make something now, I fold over a piece of paper in a journal and I stitch the fabric into the book. And then I write down what I made, what pattern I used, a little bit like Stash Hub in a digital way, but this is more of a documentation of what I made, or what I did on the sewing machine. Did I hemmed a pair of pants, or I mended something. And it's really a fun way to look back on your sewing journey because it's tangible and the fabric is right there.
Yeah, and that would be such an exciting thing to show to someone as well, because it's so tactile and really creative.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, Heather says, I was recently gifted some linen on the bolt with an original Gordon Fabrics label from decades ago.
Yeah. I just think that it's something that we really appreciate, but it has its own beauty even before it is created and made into a garment.
Yeah, definitely. Have you got plans for your linen, Heather? Let us know.
I wanted to talk.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna sort of wrap up this sort of stash portion by saying it sounds like you're really like happy and comfortable with your stash, which is amazing. Like you're discerning about what you buy, you've got your colors sorted out, and now you're sort of on Stash Hub and you're like even remembering more things that you can kind of come up with plans for in the future.
Yeah, and Stash Hub really has made me realize that we think that we remember everything, but we don't. And then and also the specificity of it. Like, okay, so I have this dark green jersey, and I'm going to make a pair of joggers and a sweatshirt, and then you realize, oh wait, there's only 2.5 meters, not 3.5 meters, and now you have to replan. So being able to know exactly how much you have of something and what the fabric content is, and then also documenting the other things so that you can remember, has really helped. It's really helped, and I think it stopped me from, buying another piece of dark green fabric, or because I think, well, I've already got a lot of green in my stash, so I'm going to explore some other colors. And that's what helps us to create capsules. We can start with an outfit now. So, I have this fabric that could be a cardigan, and this fabric that could be a pair of pants. And then what do I have in my stash that could be a top or a blouse? And now all of a sudden I've created an outfit. And you can do that, just looking on your phone, not doing what all of us dread, which is going through a stash. And that's it's a physical labor sometimes, digging it all out and then trying to sort it and put it back. So I found it very valuable for organizing capsules as well, and outfits.
Amazing. So where do you get your inspiration from when you're making?
So I think Pinterest, definitely. And Instagram, those two places. People I follow. I mean, I've I can't believe the talent that people have in our sewing community. And so I'm always inspired either by using fabric in a certain way or creating an outfit or a particular garment that happens daily. And then also just researching capsule wardrobes, looking at fashion trends, at what's classic and what's timeless, reading about slow sewing, all of those kinds of things. It's just a constant sort of litany of ideas. And, I find that Instagram and Pinterest have replaced in a lot of ways the magazines, reading articles on my iPad. There's just so much information for us. And, but I always say, if I see a picture of something and I go, or, oh, I love that, and there's just that pause, then that's an inspiration. It's not 10 pictures of seeing something and then saying, oh, now I'm going to make all 10 of those things. It's which one of those 10 can, really spoke to you. And so I try to always narrow it down, because when I first started sewing, I sewed everything and it was exhausting. And then all of a sudden, I might make a coat here and then make 3 coats. And then you realize, well, I don't actually have anything to wear with the coat. So now I try to work in outfits. So if I need to, right now I'm working on a pattern mash, which is a denim wide leg culotte with top stitching. Then I say, okay, well, what am I going to do? What can I make that goes with those? And then is there a crop jacket or something that I can make that goes over top? So as you create 3 items, you actually create part of a wardrobe. And that's really helped me to be able to curate what it is that I wear and what I'm making.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got a very sort of organized and like mindful approach both to like buying fabrics and creating your projects.
Yes. Well, I try to think about it. I mean, sometimes you walk by a bolt of fabric and you look at it and you go, oh, that's coming home with me. That's the most amazing thing ever. And you have no idea what you're going to make with it. And you have no idea what it's going to match. But then again, it's that intrinsic delight that you get from seeing fabric that you love. And sometimes that can open up a whole other area of something that you want to work on or make.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
just being aware of like, when you see something that just like gives you that feeling inside, like, yes, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yes. Yeah. It's such
And
it's an art in and of itself, not just the sewing and creating, but the choosing and the planning. And I find all of it so rewarding.
yeah, so because you have like, that phase where you first start sewing and you're learning the techniques, you're learning about the fabrics, but then over time you realize you've actually learned quite a lot about yourself as well, like your
Yes.
preferences and
Yeah.
um, you know, dressing for your own body and your own style, and you're not limited by what's in the shops and all
Yeah.
this.
I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, and I don't have much of a waist. I'm short waisted. I have long legs, long arms, a little bit like a baby giraffe in some ways. And so it was, ready to wear was nothing ever fit. And I was always having to compensate in some way or another, because it didn't feel right, or it just didn't fit right. And then sewing opened up this entire world of not only feeling great in your clothes, but feeling good about who you are. And I don't think we get that very often. So it's, putting on a pair of pants that fit you is the most amazing feeling. And for me, that came from making connections with Top Down Center Out by Ruth from Ithaca Maven. And literally it's about just having faith in a system that will help something to fit your body. And and trying it with a piece of fabric that you don't have any connection to, that it doesn't really matter, but that you like. So if it turns out now you have a pair of pants, and I've taken probably the last 6 or 7 months to really just fine tune the fit that I need. And I can say, I'm going to be 60 in November. And I think for the first time in my life, I have a pair of pants. I have several pairs of pants that fit. And making pants for me was a nemesis. I could try all sorts of different things, but, pants were hard for me. Pants and welt pockets. those
Yeah.
those welt pockets still remain something that I need to learn how to do in a more refined way. But like it feels like such a gift to be able to make something to fit you, and to have sleeves that are long enough, and to choose to have pants that are either 3/4 length, full length, or ankle length. It's freeing, and it feels really good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so special that you're now like, you've got your bespoke things. You don't have to buy trousers that are supposed to be full length and pretend they're 3/4 length and try and style it out. You've got what you actually wanted.
Yeah. And that's when being able to communicate and have conversations with people on Instagram is so important, and not being afraid to ask the questions to and find the answers that you just don't know. I don't know how to do this. How do I find out about low rise patterns? What's the best way to make an alteration? Do you make the alteration to the inseam or to the hip, the outer seam? And all of that. There's so much knowledge that we can share with one another, and that is fulfilling because it creates friendships, but it also helps us to become better sewists.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mel in the chat says, I'd really like to get to grips with the top down, center out method, but it sounds quite complicated. Is there a big learning curve?
I thought when I first read it that it would be complicated, but I kind of just jumped in. For me, I started with a skirt, just with a flat waistband at the front and then elastic in the back, but a fitted waistband. And to be honest, I don't mean to make it sound overly simple, but you measure where you wear your pants, which for me is not my waist. It's actually it's low slung on my hips. So that becomes your waist measurement. And then your hip measurement is your outer seam. And the inseam is is based on the rise, and when you put all of it together, it just magically fits. And I can remember I just did like some muslin for my first pair of pants, and then you make the waistband first, and then you look at your hip at your hip measurements and your waist measurement, your hip measurement, and you're cutting out, like a size 8 for me on the inside seam, and a size 10 on the hip, and a size 14 on the waist. And you think there is no way that this is going to fit together. But if you actually have faith and you just sew it together and try it on, you think, wow, this does work. So it's like the science of geometry, and it isn't complicated. You just have to have a bit of faith.
Just got to trust the process.
Yeah. And the first time I did it, I actually made a waistband, and with the interfacing, all of that, I made the waistband, and then I wore it around the house underneath my sweatshirt. And then I thought, oh, I forgot I had it on. And then I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if you could actually have a pair of pants that felt like that? And that's what it helps you to do. And, like for me, it's like if you're curvy, there's adjustments you can make. And for me, I'm not curvy, and I have no hips and no bum. And so there's a lot of different things that you're taking into account. And then all of a sudden, you put on a pair of pants that make you look like you do have those things. And yeah, it's really an amazing process. And not scary at all. It's just kind of like learning your basic facts. And then after you know your basic facts in math, you're good to go. You can make anything.
Amazing.
Yeah, I
We have to
really
give it a
encourage,
go, Mel.
Mel, I really, really encourage you to try it. Yeah. And if you have any questions,
Yeah.
reach out to me on Instagram. Or Ruth. Ruth is amazing. Like she's just so helpful. Yeah.
Was there something you wanted to talk about, Lou, before I interrupted you earlier? Was it about So Over 50?
It is about So Over 50. That's like the heart of my sort of Instagram connections and my volunteer work. And I just shout out to Judith and Sandy because they've created a community of people that is over 50,000 strong. And it is inclusive and supportive, and it's a significant amount of people saying no to ageism. It's not about how old you are, it's what you feel good in, and how and who you are as a person, not what you are. Those things mean a lot to me, and they're really, really important. I know my editing partners, Bird Wadhams, who's at Yoga Bird Sews, and Ruthie. I have two friends now, not just two editing partners. And just when it became too much for Sandy and Judith to do on its own, and there was that risk of something stopping, so many people stepped up to help, and there's a team of 8 or 9 of us now that work to keep the community connected. And if you're not part of So Over 50, I just really encourage you to join in, and you learn, and you love, and you connect, and you discover together. And it's such a rewarding thing to be part of. I just really wanted to make sure that people knew about it, and that they became part of it.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the impact that the communities had. Like, I remember there were posts about how, like, the sewing pattern designers never include
Yeah.
people like older than 20 on their posts. They just have, the
Yes.
young model on the things modeling the
Yes.
clothes. And actually, a lot of the people that are making the patterns are not represented. And then
Yeah.
they shared, like, later on, like, oh, look at all these companies that have actually listened to us and used, a more diverse range of models.
Yes. I mean, body inclusivity and age inclusivity are so important. We aren't all clones of one another. And if we were, wouldn't the world be a terribly boring, inhospitable place? People make the world go round. And So Over 50 is part of that. And helping men and women to really feel beautiful in their own skin and in their own bodies. Um, and as we age, we don't have to disappear. The world doesn't stop because you retire or because you turn 50. It's a vibrant, wonderful place, and we should celebrate who we are as people, and really learn to love who we are at whatever age. I often say that youth has energy and spirit, and with age comes wisdom, and it's that combination, right? You think about, I wouldn't have found Instagram if it wasn't for my daughter showing me what all of these new things are, and that's that perfect combination, right? That youth and energy coupled with wisdom create amazing things. So yeah, it all comes full circle, the connections for me.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love how they, So Over 50, it's not just like an account that you follow. Like, they're so good at promoting these connections between people. Like, they'll share about the challenges that are happening. They
Yeah.
share like tips on like how to get the most out of Instagram, like all sorts of things that really like actively engage the people that are part of the community. It's
Yeah.
really really inspiring.
Yeah, it's very powerful and positive place to spend your time if you're on Instagram. Yeah.
Definitely. So what's your, like, when you're doing the editing, like what are your sort of favorite parts of that?
Well, we're usually what we do is we spend a week in the account with our editing partners, and what that does is it allows us to be as forward facing as possible and connecting as much as possible, because it and we can share that workload. So we spend time in the account every day, answering comments, talking to people, commenting about posts. My favorite thing to do, apart from that daily interaction with people, is working with Bird and Ruthie, Sandy, all of the editors. The work we do together as a group is really fulfilling. And each week that we are an editor, we usually plan a post. So I really think hard. Like the last post that I did last week was about Fisherman Core, and realizing that, oh, there's this trend for 2025 where it's Fisherman Core, and this is what it is. And I said it's more like Balmoral chic. I mean, Queen Elizabeth has been doing Fisherman Core for 40 years. And then saying like that sometimes a trend isn't new, it's just something that's really good. And when you look at a group of women in their 50s and 60s, this is something we've done really well for a long time. It's part of who we are, that chic classic styling. And for me, that was a perfect example of the wisdom. The wisdom that comes with age sometimes is what creates the trend for the youth. So just analyzing and thinking about all of the things that we do, and it's a challenge sometimes to come up with something original, and you just always hope it's going to be of interest to people. It keeps your brain busy, and that's important for all of us as well. That creative thinking piece. And creative making is so important, I think, to people's well-being. So those are all my favorite parts, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's I said earlier, but if anyone's joined us since the beginning, there are links in the description. So make sure you go and follow So Over 50 and also Lou at So Much to Design as well.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's just really great to
Yeah.
get engaged with the community.
I mean, for me, when I say follow me, it's not a number as far as how many followers you have. It's a way to continue to build the sewing community and relationships, and to stay connected, so that we're not alone in what we do, but also that we feel fulfilled. And as my followers go up, for me, the reward in that is to know that each person that is following at So Much to Design is following a community, not a person. And that's we can't do this by ourselves. There's so much reward and confidence and courage that is created by community. I guess that's why it's so important to me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially now that like hashtags have become a bit like more difficult on Instagram, like in terms of they don't show in your feed. Like
Yeah.
now if people follow you, they can like be like, oh yeah, like let's like look up this challenge,
Yeah.
like actually search the hashtag, or maybe like
Yes.
see your tagged posts on your account as well. And then
Yeah.
they'll discover new people that might inspire them.
Right. And I mean, for me as well, like each month I'm featuring 5 or 6 independent fabric or pattern companies. And in a lot of cases, these are family run businesses, women who are working so incredibly hard to produce patterns that fit our bodies, and size inclusivity, all of that. And the small ask of follow the companies that are sponsoring fun prizes for you to enjoy is that I want to be able to highlight companies that are doing that for us. There's so many out there, and I think it's important, like folks like Stash Hub. you're working really hard behind the scenes to make our sewing life easier, and people need to know about you and be grateful that you're there and doing the work.
And
So
I think as well, like where the companies are sponsoring, your challenge, they're companies that are, actively engaging in the sewing community. So, people that follow you, like their goal is to engage in the sewing community.
yes,
A
yeah,
good way to do that is then to engage with other people that are engaging with the sewing community.
yeah. And I mean, you can go fast if you go alone, but if you go together, then it's a much more fulfilling experience. And so um, I think we just have to keep volunteering our time and reaching out in as many ways that we can think of, so that our worldwide experience is valuable to us. The world can be a pretty complicated place, and when you look at what isn't working in the world, it's lack of relationship, lack of connection and communication that's creating a lot of that. And so bringing those things to the forefront and teaching younger generations that they're important is good work, and it's always worth your time. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We got a message from Mel earlier that
Yeah.
says, do you favor a particular pattern brand, and what type of garment do you find yourself repeating?
Uh, it's funny. I think part of sewing is finding for lack of a better word, but actually finding our uniform. And, I know for me, like embracing the fact that that I'm short waisted and I'm very, very tall, is knowing, like, I love a collar. I like, I can't, a fit and flare dress is not the kind of thing that I can wear. I love it on other people. I'm more of a sheath dress. And, I mean, I think we can only discover what things we feel good in by trying other patterns. But when you do find it, I mean, I worked for 6 weeks to create a pant pattern that I really like the look of and that fits well. And now it's about, I'm going to widen the legs. I'm going to make this a narrow. I'm going to make this a jogger. I'm going to add some cargo pockets. I'm going to try it in a wool drape. I'm going to try it in a corduroy. But it's okay that it's the same pattern because it fits. And I love jackets and coats. I mean, they're that third piece in your wardrobe that can change everything. You put on a crew neck sweater and a pair of slacks and change your jacket. And you just take 4 jackets with you on a journey, on a trip, and nobody's going to know you're wearing the same thing. So those are the things. Accessorizing, I love, especially with vintage things. I can't get enough shoes ever. I always say to my husband, well, if I make all my clothes, I have to be able to buy my shoes. Pattern companies. For me personally, the sewing revival, Janine from Australia, the fit and finish of her patterns, amazing. I like Fiber Mood. The wardrobe by me, also excellent patterns. Seam Work, True Bias, those are probably my go-to. Gracier, which is a Russian company. They've got some really creative designs. So I find that I go, like, those would be the ones that just come to mind because I've repeatedly used their patterns. Helen's Closet, or I've repeatedly made something from them that fits my body and my lifestyle. But for me, I think really the fit that I get from independent pattern companies is so much better than the fit that I would get from companies like the Big Five. And that's for me personally. It doesn't mean that the Big Five doesn't make great patterns, but it's about finding the patterns that fit you. And
Well, it's like learning the blocks that are like similar to your
yeah,
shape, or
yeah, and then
once you're into a pattern company, you know what adjustments you need as well.
yeah. And then realizing, like I did a mashup for these culottes, and it was like the Sinclair poppy pants, and then it was laid over top of the Lander pants by True Bias and the Emerson pants, which were wide leg. And you realize that the reason why you keep going back to those pattern companies for myself is because the blocks are similar. And so then the pattern mash and pattern hacking is even more fun because I don't have the intellect and the ability to create a pattern, but I can mash a pattern that's been created really beautifully. Um,
And
and
once you've fitted a pattern like that, you've done the work then.
yeah,
So like it's actually kind of easier to say, oh well, I'm gonna, widen the legs or put different sleeves on or something, than it
yes,
is to kind of essentially start from scratch with a different pattern, or try and
yes,
make one, completely self-drafted. At
yeah,
least you've got a starting point and you know that it's likely to fit, because
yeah.
that's what
I
you
know.
worked on.
I picked two goals for myself. One was to just persevere and make pants that fit and not to stop. So I really feel like I'm there now. My next learnings thing, I'm learning besides welt pockets. I think welt pockets will take a while. Is a full bust adjustment, because I'm kind of like just a rectangle with boobs, and so I really do need to learn how to um, just be able to make a full bust adjustment as part of my sewing process. So that's my next learning curve after pants that fit. I don't know if those, I don't know if that's what everybody else struggles with, but those are definitely my learning curves.
Amazing. Well, I really appreciate your sort of attitude as being a lifelong learner, and setting those goals for yourself.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Melissa. Is it ever too late to start sewing?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I think you just jump in with both feet and don't be afraid to take that risk. Sewing for me is because I just said I'm going to try again or really learn from scratch to do it properly and take my time. It's ignited a passion in me that I didn't even know was there. I knew that creativity and making things was part of who I was, but it's the most rewarding thing I've done. And the options and the possibilities are endless. And it can bring, I mean, yes, there are times when it's frustrating. And yes, there are times when it can be overwhelming, but that's when you can connect with your friends. But it's such a rewarding thing to do. I think everybody should learn how to sew, and everybody should try it. And from the age of 8 to 88, if you've never learned how to sew, then just embrace it and try it. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And you never know, like it could just become this whole like huge thing. Like I feel like for both of us, where we sort of, oh yeah, let's, we'll give it a go, and
Yeah.
it sort of completely changed the landscape of our lives. Like a few years down the line, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
If you had said to me 5 years ago when I put my first picture on Instagram and didn't even know what a hashtag was, and I was so frightened. It was such a huge leap of faith and a risk to put my photo out there on a platform that anybody could see. And it was that leap of faith and courage. And 5 years later, I, I I'm so rewarded by the community that surrounds me, that supports me, that cares about me as a person. And um, who would have thought in 2020, sitting on my front doorstep taking a picture, that 5 years later I'd be on a YouTube live? Like, if you told me that, I think I would have been petrified. But
How does your daughter feel about it? Is she like, what have I started? Like, what did I
oh
do?
no, my husband is my photographer, and Sydney takes photos when Mike isn't Mr. Mike isn't around, and she's been incredibly supportive. And just the other day, she said, "Mom," she said, "my friend was looking for a coat pattern online and found a picture of you." And she said, "Oh my God, Sydney, your mom's like on Instagram everywhere." And I said, "Well, that's really weird, but wonderful all at the same time." And so Sydney's just finished university, and so she's at a place now where she has more time to sew. And so that's going to be a mother-daughter thing that I look forward to doing together with her. And then I've established a small in-person group of friends in Victoria that sew, and it just fills my bucket. It fills my
Oh,
bucket.
that's incredible.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
amazing. So
yeah.
inspiring.
Thanks.
Well, that's the end of our hour. Is there anything you just quickly want to mention before we wrap up?
Um, I think what's really important to me is keep making connections through sewing. Keep sewing. Don't ever say, "Oh, I only made this month." Celebrate your make, celebrate yourself and your creativity, and don't forget to share it on my makes for the month so that you can win wonderful prizes and learn more about companies that are doing what's best for you as a sewer. And if you've never started sewing, if you haven't started sewing yet, jump in and just do it, because it's an amazing thing.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Lou.
Yeah.
And thanks for everyone who has joined us live and on the replay. So I'll be back at the same time next week. And I'm going to be talking to Stephanie Canada next week. So that will be
Awesome.
really exciting. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you on Instagram, Lou.
Yes, and thanks for helping us organize our stashes.
Thank you very much. Cool.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.